So do you think you know the true story of Christopher Columbus? Well, prepare to have your mind blown. I'm about to unveil 10 shocking lies about Christopher Columbus that you probably have believed all your life. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. I'm Toby Nomad, and I travel around the world exploring history, hidden gems, and unique experiences. This year, I'm gonna retrace the path of Christopher Columbus, personally following in his footsteps. And what better way to start that adventure than by exposing the myths and maybe generating a little bit of controversy. So let's dive in. Lie number 1, Columbus discovered America. The myth. A common narrative taught in many schools, especially in the past, is that Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492. This claim is often interpreted as Columbus being the first person to find the American continents, unknown to the rest of the world until his arrival. But the reality is a little bit different. Although he did pretty much discover and uncover America for Europe and Eurasia, which were the dominant powers and civilizations at the time, it had already been discovered millennia earlier by Native Americans who had crossed over from Asia and established rich and complex civilizations. The term discovered is therefore highly controversial and highly debated in the context of Columbus and America. While Columbus did bring the existence of the New World to the attention of Europe, he wasn't even the first European to find it. Norse Viking Leif Erikson is believed to have landed in Newfoundland, Canada about 500 years earlier. However, these explorations did not lead to widespread awareness or lasting contact. The statement that Columbus discovered America should be understood in its historical context. It signifies the moment that European awareness of the Americas began, leading to significant and lasting global changes. Lie number 2, Columbus proved that the Earth was round, right? Wrong. A popular story often recounted is that Christopher Columbus set out to prove the Earth was round, challenging the widely held belief in a flat Earth during his time. But that's not the reality. The myth is a significant oversimplification and largely inaccurate. By the time of Columbus's voyage in 1492, the spherical nature of the Earth was already well known among educated Europeans. The idea of a flat Earth had been largely dismissed by scholars and navigators alike. Columbus's main objective was not to prove the Earth's shape, but to find a new and faster route to Asia by sailing westward. His miscalculation was not in the shape of the Earth, but in underestimating its actual size, leading him to believe that Asia could be easily reached by sailing west from Europe. It couldn't be easily reached. The perpetuation of this myth about Columbus's genius likely stems from a combination of romanticized storytelling and historical oversimplifications. It paints a picture of Columbus as a visionary who challenged the scientific consensus of his time, which aligns with the narrative that Columbus was a heroic explorer. However, this overlooks the actual scientific knowledge and debates of the 15th century. Lie number 3, Columbus's primary motive was exploration. So the myth. It's often believed that Christopher Columbus's primary motive for his voyages was exploration and scientific curiosity. Well, the reality is that while his exploration was a part of Columbus's motive, his primary motives were more complex and included economic gain, political ambition, and notably religious zeal. Columbus was driven by the pursuit of wealth and a faster trade route to Asia, but he also harbored deep religious convictions. They played a significant role in his endeavors. So let's try to break these down one by one. Columbus sought a new route to Asia to access lucrative trade opportunities. His negotiations with the Spanish monarchy promised him titles, a share of profits, and governance rights over discovered lands. This indicated his desire for personal wealth and status. What about religious motivations? Well, Columbus's religious motives are well documented. He saw his voyages as part of a divine mission to spread Christianity. In his writings, including his journal and letters, Columbus often expressed a desire to convert non-Christians to Christianity. For instance, in a letter to the Spanish monarchy, Columbus wrote about his first voyage, and I quote, "I hope in our Lord to be able to propagate his holy name and his gospel throughout all the universe." This comes from Columbus, letter to Luis Santangel regarding first voyage in 1493. Additionally, historians like Carol Delaney, in her groundbreaking book Columbus and the Quest for Jerusalem, argue that Columbus was motivated by a millennialist belief that his discoveries could help in the recovery of Jerusalem from Muslim control, which was a preoccupation at the time. Lie number 4, Columbus was a hero. So let's start with the myth. A prevalent narrative in many historical accounts and popular culture depict Christopher Columbus as a heroic figure, an intrepid explorer who courageously discovered new lands and paved the way for further exploration and colonization. So, the reality. Well, the perception of Columbus as a straightforward hero is increasingly contested and debunked by modern historians. They highlight aspects of his expeditions that paint a more complex and often darker picture of his legacy. You've probably heard some of these. So let's talk about those darker aspects of Columbus's voyages. Columbus's treatment of the indigenous peoples of the Americas is a central point of this controversy. His expeditions led to the enslavement, mistreatment, and significant reduction of native populations. Howard Zinn, in his famous book, A People's History of the United States, says, "The Indians had been given an impossible task. The only gold around was bits of dust garnered from the streams. So they fled. They were hunted down like dogs, and they were killed." Columbus's governance of the territories he explored was marked by tyranny and brutality, including harsh punishments like cutting off the hands of natives who did not meet his demands for gold. So the legacy of Christopher Columbus is a subject of ongoing debate and reassessment. While his voyages were undeniably significant in the course of world history, understanding Columbus's actions in their full context reveals a figure who is far more complex than the traditional image of a hero. Lie number 5, Columbus was a monster. Okay, so now we have the other side of the story, the myth. In recent years, there's been a growing narrative, especially among critics on the left, who portray Christopher Columbus not just as a flawed historical figure, but as an outright monster of a person, a symbol of colonialism, racism, exploitation, and genocide. So, this perspective focuses exclusively on the negative aspects of Columbus's voyages and his rule. While highlighting important critiques of colonialism and its impacts, this myopic view can risk oversimplifying Columbus's character and motivations, and our entire history. The reality is much more complicated than that. So let's talk about the historical context and his intentions. So it's crucial to understand Columbus within the context of 15th century European exploration and world history. His actions, while often brutal by modern standards, were not unusual for the time anywhere. Moreover, Columbus's intentions were not solely driven by personal greed or cruelty. He was part of a broader movement of exploration and expansion that characterized the era. Let's talk about the cultural exchange. Columbus's voyages led to the exchange of crops, animals, and technologies between the Old and the New Worlds. This was known, for better or for worse, as the Columbian Exchange. This exchange significantly altered and often greatly enhanced the agricultural practices and cuisines of both worlds. Pioneering spirit. Well, Columbus was a man of extraordinary ambition and vision, and grit. His proposal to reach Asia by sailing west was revolutionary for his time, showcasing his willingness to think outside of the box, to challenge the status quo, and to take risks. He also had navigational expertise. He was an expert navigator. His understanding of wind patterns, ocean currents, and celestial navigation was exceptional, especially given the limited knowledge of the era. Resilience and determination? Yeah. Columbus's persistence in the face of skepticism and multiple rejections from potential patrons demonstrates his remarkable grit and determination. He overcame considerable obstacles to realize his vision. He also was a strong leader and had great abilities to influence others. Despite his flaws, he was a leader who was able to inspire his crew, overcome mutiny after mutiny, and navigate completely uncharted waters. His voyages fundamentally changed the course of world history and opened up a new chapter of global interaction. He effectively ended the Middle Ages. Let's talk about Columbus's own views of his actions. Columbus believed that his voyages would bring significant benefits, not just to Spain, but also in a religious and cultural sense. He saw himself as an envoy of Christianity, aiming to spread the new faith to new lands. His writings often reflect a sense of divine mission and destiny. In his letter to the Spanish monarchs after his first voyage, Columbus wrote about his encounters with indigenous people, stating, "I told them, as best I could, that they were good to be converted to our holy faith by love than by force." This comes from Columbus's letter to Ferdinand and Isabella in 1493. So there we can see a piece of what was going on in his head. There's still a lot of people today motivated by religious convictions. So how different are we from Columbus of 500 years ago? So while it's crucial to examine critically the negative aspects of Columbus's actions, especially on indigenous populations, it's also important to recognize the multifaceted nature of his character and achievements. Columbus was a product of his time, with ambitions and beliefs shaped by the context of 15th century Europe. His life and voyages are a blend of impressive skills, pioneering spirit, and controversial actions. If you're fascinated by the journey of Christopher Columbus and want to experience his path firsthand with me, I've got just the thing for you. Don't miss out on my special series. I have it here on a playlist. It's called Path of Columbus. In this series, I'm taking you on a thrilling adventure visiting the very places Columbus traveled to and affected, for better or for worse. We'll walk the streets of Córdoba, Spain, sail from Palos de la Frontera, and even set foot on the shores of the Bahamas, which was the first place they sighted land in the New World, just like Columbus did 500 years ago. It's all right here on my channel, Toby Nomad. So make sure to click the link in the description below or the card above to start this extraordinary journey with me. No one has ever yet done it on YouTube. And while you're at it, something really important, drop a comment below. Comments are the best part of YouTube. They allow me to know what you like, what you don't like, to suggest things, to give feedback, to correct me. Which parts of Columbus's paths are you most excited to see? I'm really curious to know. Okay, so now let's dive back into our list. You're going to be surprised by what else is often misunderstood about Christopher Columbus. All right, let's move along to lie number 6. Columbus named the native people Indians thinking that he was in India. Okay, so the myth, a common belief is that Christopher Columbus called the native people that he encountered Indians because he mistakenly thought that he had reached India. Well, here's the reality. While Columbus did refer to the indigenous peoples as Indios, which is Spanish for Indians, the situation is a little bit more nuanced than simply mistaking the New World for India. So, Columbus's understanding of geography was based on the knowledge of maps of his time, which were far less accurate than today's. Columbus knew he was undertaking a westward voyage to find a new route to Asia, and he did initially believe that the islands he encountered were part of the Asian continent. However, the term Indian was not used because he thought that he had reached the modern-day country of India. Instead, it was a generic term used during that era for the people of Asia. So let's talk about the evolution of the term. The term Indian, to describe the indigenous peoples of the Americas, persisted long after Columbus's time, even after it became clear that these lands were not part of Asia or India. In fact, some Native Americans have embraced the term and prefer it to more politically correct updates even today. I've found personally, however, that most Native Americans that I have met and studied their cultures, they prefer not to be referred to in general terms whenever possible, but more strongly identify with the specific name of their people or their tribe, such as the Dene, which the Spanish and Americans later called the Navajo in Arizona and that part of the United States. Lie number 7, Columbus landed on the American mainland. So a widespread misconception is that Christopher Columbus discovered the United States or landed anywhere on the mainland of North America during his initial voyage in 1492. The reality, no, not even Mexico. Contrary to popular belief, Christopher Columbus never set foot on North America, the North American mainland at all, during any of his voyages. His voyages were primarily confined to the Caribbean islands, parts of Central America, and the northern coast of South America. But let's break that down by voyage because it's pretty interesting. The first voyage in 1492 and 1493, Columbus landed on several Caribbean islands, which he believed to be on the outskirts of Asia. His first landing was on an island in the Bahamas, commonly believed to be present-day San Salvador Island, also formerly known as Watling Island. He also skirted the coast of Cuba and tried to start a settlement on Hispaniola, which is now Haiti and Dominican Republic. On the second voyage, Columbus explored a larger part of the Caribbean, including Dominica, Guadeloupe, and Jamaica, but he did not reach the North American mainland. It was during his third voyage between 1498 and 1500 that Columbus did reach the mainland, but not the mainland of North America. He landed on the coast of present-day Venezuela in South America, which marked the very first time a European expedition had definitively reached the mainland of the Americas at all. On the fourth voyage, which took place between 1502 and 1504, Columbus's fourth and final voyage took him to Central America, where he explored areas along the coast of modern-day Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and even Panama. Despite his extensive exploration, he still did not reach the North American mainland. That means no USA, no Florida, no Mexico, certainly not any Canada. Let's go on to lie number 8. Columbus died wealthy and honored. You've heard that? Well, it's wrong. There's a common belief that Christopher Columbus died wealthy and honored, enjoying the fruits of his many discoveries and conquests and of his great exploration. But that's not the reality. Contrary to popular belief, Columbus died in relative obscurity and disappointment, far from the wealth and honor that many assume he attained. His later years were marked by political troubles, legal battles, and diminishing status. Who does that sound like? After his initial successes and recognition, Columbus's fortunes began to decline precipitously. What happened was that his governance of the territories that he explored was marred by mismanagement, controversy, and allegations of tyranny by him and his brother, and eventually his son. These issues led to his arrest and return to Spain in chains in 1500, although he was eventually released by his buddy Isabella. Columbus spent his later years in legal battles trying to reclaim the titles and profits that he believed were due to him based on his arrangements with the Spanish crown. He felt cheated by the monarchy and lamented his situation. In a letter to the Spanish monarchs that we actually have, Columbus wrote, "I am in a state of poverty, without a roof to cover me or a place to retire, always in anxiety." He wrote that in 1502. Well, Columbus died on May 20th, 1506, in the city of Spain called Valladolid. He was relatively forgotten and without the vast riches that he had hoped for. His recognition and reputation would fluctuate posthumously, with his achievements being celebrated and criticized at different times and for different reasons throughout history. Lie number 9, Columbus was Italian. Okay, so the myth and the widely held belief is that Christopher Columbus was Italian. Ooh, this is going to be a controversial one. So the reality is that while Columbus is often claimed by Italy as a native son, his exact birthplace and nationality are actually subjects of historical debate. The political landscape of 15th century Europe was vastly different, and the concept of national identity was not as clear-cut as it is today. Let's bring in some historical evidence. Most historical evidence does suggest that Columbus was born in the Republic of Genoa, which is now part of modern Italy. However, there have been claims and theories proposing other possible origins, including Spain, Portugal, and even Greece. These theories, though they're less widely accepted and supported and have much less evidence than the Genoese origin, are still tossed around. What did Columbus think about himself? Well, Columbus himself wrote in a testament that he was from Genoa. Quote, "Being I born in Genoa," comes from Christopher Columbus's actual testament in 1502. However, he did spend much of his adult life in Portugal and Spain and conducted his voyages under the patronage of the Spanish crown. His identity was more that of a Genoese in the service of Spain than a nationalistic Italian as understood in modern terms. So to conclude about Columbus's identity, while he is commonly associated with Italy, the concept of Italy as we know it today wasn't really a thing back then. His identity and life were more reflective of the fluid and complex nature of national and cultural affiliations in 15th century Europe. He's best understood as a Genoese explorer who became a figure of historical significance under the auspices of the Spanish crown. This transcends a simple nationalistic label. All right, lie number 10 is a fun one. Columbus brought syphilis to Europe. Well, people have tried to say that kind of the disease exchange went both ways. We know that Europeans brought a ton of diseases to the Americas and killed a lot of the Native Americans, or what they were called Indians. But some believe that syphilis, which we know did exist in the Americas before Columbus arrived, came with Columbus back to Europe. This is actually no longer believed to be the case. Syphilis was likely already in Europe for thousands of years. In fact, if you look at the writings of Greek Hippocrates, you hear him talking about lesions which sound an awful lot like syphilis. Basically what happened was there was a large outbreak of syphilis after a French invasion in 1494. So everyone said, oh, this coincides. It must be that syphilis was brought from Columbus's ships, and this New World disease is now ravaging us. But even further DNA evidence of bones suggests otherwise. They've actually now found that in the 1200s, in an Augustinian friary, of all places, sounds kind of makes sense now that you think about it nowadays in modern terms, but this friary had syphilis among its friars. So Columbus probably didn't bring syphilis from the New World to Europe. It was probably already present in both continents. What a joy. So as we reach the end of our journey debunking the myths of Christopher Columbus, it's clear that history is a tapestry woven with threads of truth and fiction. It challenges us to look beyond the surface and question what we've been taught, which is what I love to do and what I want to continue doing with this exciting opportunity on this channel. So that's all for the shocking lies for today. If you found this video enlightening and enjoyed the expedition into the past, please give it a like. It really helps the channel. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing for more deep dives into history's most fascinating stories and other travel adventures finding hidden gems in special places around the world. Together, we'll keep uncovering the truths behind the legends. Facts are very important to me. And don't forget, if you're intrigued by Columbus's journey, check out my series in my playlist, The Path of Columbus, where I actually go to the places where he went, step by step. It's gonna be epic. A lot of truth and a lot of myth busting along the way. Do you want to see the epic palace castle that you can actually go to where Christopher Columbus met Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand? I have a video about that. Where is it and what's it like? Just click here on the next video. I'm Toby Nomad, and I'll see you in a quick minute, hopefully in the comment section.